I'm pleased to announce today the extension of the collective bargaining agreement for the Hyundai A-League to the end of season 2014-15, so a 2-year extension on the current agreement that we have in place with the PFA and the players. This is another very positive day for football. There's been some tremendous stories, some great things happening, and we believe this is another great story for football. It's been, I guess, a long process, but a very unified process. Certainly from my perspective, being still reasonably fresh in the job, to get the PFA, the FFA, a whole range of players and also the clubs in the room together to take a united approach to making sure that we come up with a collective bargaining agreement that secures the ongoing viability of the Hyundai A-League has been very, very important. I'd like to acknowledge in particular the PFA and Brendan Simon and Adam Vivian. They've been tremendous through the process. They've also been instrumental in involving a whole range of players from different clubs in the process as well. And from a club perspective, Greg Griffin, the chairman of Adelaide United, and John Mackay, the chief executive of Central Coast Mariners, have represented the clubs exceptionally well. So we have had an opportunity to take a united approach and come up with an overall outcome that I believe secures the ongoing viability of the league. What will happen in practical terms is it's a 2-year agreement, and the FFA will be matching the salary cap with our distribution to the clubs over the next 2 years. It'll be $2.5 million next season, and then it will increase by a further 2% the following season. So from our perspective, a very important day, a very important step in the right direction, and a great opportunity for football and the Hyundai A-League to continue to grow and continue to grow the way that it is currently. I might pass over to Brendan for a few comments too.
Thanks, Damien. The PFA, of course, has for a long time maintained that the wellbeing of the game is a precondition to the wellbeing of the players. And as is well known by the people in this room, relations between FFA, the PFA and the clubs have gone through some very difficult times in recent years. So when we came to negotiate this agreement, everyone was aware that there were some very important challenges that needed to be met. What we've been able to do in this agreement is 3 or 4 very, very important things. The first is to enable a reasonable increase to the salary cap, importantly in circumstances where that will be matched by the club dividend, as Damien mentioned, to ensure that the clubs have the capacity to pay the players. And we maintain a salary cap regime, which means that probably uniquely in the world of football, we have one of the most even and exciting and competitively balanced competitions. Secondly, our well-documented concerns, particularly around insurance and contract security, have been met. FFA has introduced a number of important measures into the collective bargaining agreement, most importantly one which quarantines that dividend for the purposes of paying players, so that players will know with much greater certainty that their contracts will be met and we will not have the unfortunate circumstances that occurred at clubs such as North Queensland and Gold Coast. Of course, we also have a new broadcast deal which commits the competition to 10 teams, and that provides further security to the players. Another very important innovation is a substantial investment in player education, development and wellbeing. We all know that football is a short-term and a precarious career, and whilst the salaries available to A-League players are improving, no one would suggest that an A-League player can complete their career in circumstances where they're ready for life after football. So jointly, FFA, the PFA, FIFPro, the World Players Union, and also the Socceroos through their collective bargaining agreement will enable the PFA to invest over $4 million over 2 years in player education, development and other forms of representation. That's a quantum leap on the current situation, and it's something which we regard as very, very important. Probably the final point I'd like to make is the strategic relationship which is developed between FFA, the clubs, the players and the PFA over this negotiation. There's clearly a modest increase in the salary cap on the back of a new broadcast deal. The only reason the PFA would agree to that is that we're satisfied that the players are already taking home more than a fair share of revenue, and now is the time to invest in the security of the clubs and also the security of the players, and importantly in education and development. We think we've been able to achieve all of those those things with this agreement. It would not have been possible if it wasn't for the transparency and the professionalism of the negotiators for FFA and the clubs, and we certainly thank them, as led by Damien, Greg and John Mackay, for their professionalism and their support. Finally, we're absolutely delighted to have so many players at the table, and I'd like to ask Simon, as PFA President, to comment on that.
Thanks, Brendan. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Damien and FFA for his time, and Greg Griffin and John Mackay also. And I'd especially like to acknowledge the contribution of there was 13 players who attended meetings. There was myself, Pascal Boschka, Bruce Jitte, John McCain, Ante Kovic, Tando Valapi, Matt Smith, Adrian Leia, Matt Fascini, Nathan Coe, Mark Milligan, Lee Broxham and Clement Tasevsky, who all contributed at one time or another. We had about 18 meetings with FFA, some were half day, some were full day. We had some over the phone, but most of them were face-to-face, and it was a great opportunity for the players to understand what it's all about and for FFA to understand the players and where the players are coming from. And I think it was a huge contributor to getting the outcome. The other thing I'd like to make mention is to the tier extension and the staff of the PFA. I'd like to thank the staff of the PFA for working so hard and getting the players the outcomes that they desired. There was about 50 players who turned up, and they flew into Melbourne. We had a great day. We presented the CBA to them, and they were pretty happy with the way things are moving forward.
Two-year extension, yeah. So consideration was given to a longer agreement. I think there's two things have happened, Ray. Obviously, we have a new broadcast rights deal. We agreed in the end that 2 years was a good amount of time to get some more certainty around exactly what things look like. And then, we'll be back at the table in another 18 months or less, probably. I think what's clear is that we have a very unified approach collectively to make sure that we're making the right decisions to make sure the league continues to be sustainable. So that's why 2 years was decided on in the end.
As you know, I'm now heavily involved with FIFPro, the World Players Union. The biggest problem in the world of football is that the economic model is not right in so many countries, and so players go without their salaries. It's the biggest problem in the world of football, and it's been wrong that it's been a problem in Australia. So we had to address it, and in fairness to FFA, there wasn't a dispute over that. The question we had to apply our minds to was, how do we effectively resolve that? The most important is the quarantining of the dividend for players' salaries, but there are other protections. For example, should there be a change in the ownership, and the CBA is quite extensive on those. But I think what's a very important development is that the PFA will now take control in partnership with FFA and have substantial funds in order to invest in educating and preparing players for life after football. We will apply our minds to that. We're concerned that players, we don't know how well players who have been through our competition are. We will do a major study into the well-being of retired players, and we will use the findings of that study to inform our programs moving forward. That, for us, I think, they're both important, but that is a very important development, and we're pleased that we've been able to reach an agreement on it. Well, no, they're all different issues, but as you know, in any negotiation, you need to package them up. Ray made the question before, why a 2-year agreement? We have had an agreement for 5 years, and we actually think that it's a very substantial achievement for the players to maintain the framework of that agreement. That agreement provides for guaranteed contracts legally. It provides incredible benefits for players when they're injured. It provides for a free labour market. These are issues which are not in many countries. So we're very pleased to protect that. We've extended it for another 2 years, primarily because we're confident that the next 2 years will be good ones for football. We believe the players are contributing. We believe FFA is doing a great job engaging the fans, and we think the next 2 years will be positive, and then that will be a more appropriate time for us to sit down, and I'm sure when we sit down in 2 years' time, we will be looking to afford to, or perhaps even a longer-term agreement to align it to the next broadcast rights deal.
Oh, I think it's the first time that the players are part of the solution rather than, the reasoning or the problem. We've got to a point where, I'll reiterate what Brendan and Damien said, that the cap's going to be covered, so that the player spend is covered at club level. The players respect that, they acknowledge that, and I mean, I'm sure you can attest to it that, every player is out there to perform for their clubs, to perform for the league and to perform for the game. They're probably the three things that the players will do and continue to do, no matter what. The protections are very important, and it's our aim to have players walk out of the game in a better position than they did than they walked in. Not only financially, but more so as people, as hopefully they can continue and they can work in the game and do those things. But we want these guys walking out, and we want it the career of choice.
It's an area where we've been lacking. And we made that clear in the negotiations that we were falling behind in circumstances where the challenges that our players face are more pronounced, arguably, than the others. An AFL player doesn't have to deal with an international transition. An AFL player does not have the same complexities of being a footballer. And what we want to do is help educate players so they can also not only develop outside of football but make better football decisions. When should I move overseas? Where should I go? What is the right time to make that decision? The reason we think that's important is we have a talent pool of around 230 A-League players. We then have about another 100 or so who are playing at a strong level internationally. So we have between 350 and 400 players from which the Socceroos are to be selected. We want to be internationally competitive with 400 players. Brazil has 16,000. England, Italy, Spain all have thousands. So we have to invest in each one of those careers. They're all a precious commodity. And I think we still have a long way to go, but this shows we're serious, and as the game grows in all of its areas, the game will invest. It'll invest in game development, it'll invest in the clubs, and now we're confident not only will it just invest in player salaries, but it'll also invest in developing the players outside of the game, and that's a great step for us to make at this time in the development of the game.
Well, I've got a slight advantage that I've got a passion for what I do at the PFA. And helping players, so I've taken it upon myself to spend as much time as possible at the PFA or working on PFA things. I've been president now, I think it's coming on 8 years, so I had to take it upon myself to get out there, to network, to try and find the opportunities or the right mentor, those kinds of things. Now hopefully with the research that we're going to do, we're going to go in, we're going to research these guys, we're going to see what they need, see what they're lacking, see what's going to help them. And those things, those sacrifices, and every time we're in an executive meeting or we're addressing the players, we're not helping. I'm not helping myself now. This agreement isn't only for me; it's for the guys coming through, and you're always helping the guys that are coming. You may have missed out, but you're always going to help that next guy coming through, that Ben Garuccio, that Stefan Mork. They're just two names to mention, but it's those guys that are going to prosper. It's those guys that are going to get the most out of it.
We had that discussion just before. We had 18 meetings in total, and it was probably 5 or 6 months, really, from beginning to end. And I think there was a period, Ray, where it was important, certainly to me, coming into the job fresh, to make sure we had a very strong foundation upon which to build the agreement in terms of our relationship. And that's something that I think has come a long way over the last 6 months. And Brendan asked me during the process if this was the longest negotiation I'd been involved in for a 2-year period of an agreement. In some ways it was, but in other ways getting the relationship right, not just between the PFA and the FFA, but also to develop the relationship between the clubs and the players was fundamental. And we believe that we're taking a united approach in this context, and it's going to help football enormously going forward. Yeah, well, this deal was done separate to that, really. I think the World Cup qualification means a whole lot of things. Obviously, it has some financial benefit, but for us within the business of football right now, we're very clear that it enables us just to keep growing and building the positive narrative around football right now. So whilst financial is an aspect, it presents a whole range of other opportunities, especially around inspiring the next generation of Australians, boys and girls, to play football and get involved. And the virtuous cycle continues. So, it was a fantastic outcome qualifying for the World Cup. It definitely helps the Hyundai A-League and helps all of football.
We've got an agreement, Ray, to the end of next year for the Socceroos. That's now subject to a review, not because of the qualification, but because of actually the new broadcast rights agreement, which I think starts today. So it's a great day for that perspective as well. We'll sit down with FFA and the players. We've been meeting with them in recent camps, and I'm confident we can resolve that in an expeditious way. And of course, we also are renegotiating the agreement for the Matildas. And so we're actually one of the few player associations in the world of football which will have those 3 collective bargaining agreements. And in answer to the question, World Cup qualification is a matter more covered by the Socceroos agreement than the A-League one.
Yeah. I should add to that too, Ray, just quickly, that one of the reasons for a 2-year agreement also provides the prospect of us having a whole of football CBA that incorporates the Hyundai A-League, the Socceroos and the Matildas. And that's something that we've committed to the PFA to working on to enable us to have, if you like, a whole of football approach to getting the right outcomes.